This book is a pearl of ancient Chinese philosophy, a legendary monument of literature where the main provisions of Confucian teaching are concentrated. Chapter 1. Humanity is rarely found in sly speeches and in insinuating facial expressions. Young people should be respectful to their parents at home, respectful to their elders outside the house, be careful, sincere, and truthful, have abundant love for everyone, and get closer to humane people. If there is free time left after this, then it should be devoted to teaching. Anyone who, during his father's lifetime, looked into their intentions and after death looks at their deeds and for 3 years does not change the order established by their father can be called respectful. Don't worry that people don't know you, but worry that you don't know people. Chapter 2. If you lead people by laws and maintain order by punishments, then although they will try to avoid them, they will not have a sense of shame. If you lead them by virtue and maintain order in them by ceremonies, then they will have a sense of shame, and they will correct themselves. Whoever repeats the old and learns the new can be a leader for others. Without constant repetition, one may fear that the old knowledge will be forgotten, and thus there will be no support for acquiring new knowledge. Who is the noble? The one who acts first and then speaks. A noble man cares about common interests, not about party interests, and a low man, on the contrary, cares about party interests, not about common interests. Learning without reflection is useless, but also thinking without learning is dangerous. Exclusive occupation with alien teachings can only be harmful. To listen a lot and leave aside the doubtful, and to speak carefully about other things, then there will be few accusations. To observe a lot and leave aside the dangerous, but otherwise act cautiously, then there will be few reasons for repentance, and if there are few accusations because of speeches and few reasons for repentance in actions, then there will be a salary. What needs to be done to subdue the people? If you elevate honest people and eliminate the dishonest, then the people will be subdued. If you elevate the dishonest and eliminate honest people, then they will not be subdued. To make sacrifices to other people's peanuts is to curry favor. To be aware of duty and not doing it is cowardice. Chapter 3. People consider serving the sovereign in compliance with all the rules as flattery. Chapter 4. A noble man knows duty, but a low man knows benefit. At the sight of a worthy person, think about how to match him, and at the sight of an unworthy one, examine yourself, for fear that you might have the same shortcomings. Those who behave reservedly are rarely subject to mistakes. Chapter 5. What I don't want others to do to me, I don't want others to do. Zulu, having heard something kind, which he had not yet been able to put into effect, was only afraid of hearing something else new. Why was Kongwensu called educated? Despite his quick mind, he loved to study and was not ashamed to ask questions to his inferiors, which is why he was called educated. The 4 qualities of a noble man. He is modest in his behavior, respectful to his elders, generous in providing for the people, and fair in using their labor. Yan Pingzhong was adept at dealing with people, maintaining respect for them even after a long acquaintance. Ji Wenzu would think 3 times, and then he would execute. When the philosopher heard about this, he said, "Twice is already enough." The philosopher said, "I have never seen a person who could notice their mistakes and internally condemn himself for them." Chapter 6. Is it not possible to govern people by being attentive to oneself and liberal in their activities, but to be undemanding both to oneself and to one's activities? Wouldn't that be too undemanding? When nature takes precedence over artificiality, we have rudeness, and when artificiality prevails over nature, we have hypocrisy. And only a proportional combination of nature and artificiality creates noble person. Chapter 7. The philosopher said, "To enrich myself with knowledge in silence, to study with insatiable thirst, and to enlighten people without knowing fatigue. Which of these three qualities is in me?" The philosopher taught 4 subjects: writing, morality, devotion, and sincerity. Chapter 8. For a person in a high position, 3 things are important in the rules of behavior: body movements free from rudeness and negligence, facial expression close to sincerity, and tone of speech free from vulgarity and incongruity. Chapter 9. The philosopher was free from the following 4 subjects: prejudice, confidence, stubbornness, and selfishness. Is it possible not to follow reasonable advice? Yes, but in this case, the correction is important. But if a person accepts advice but does not correct himself, I can't do anything about it. Consider loyalty and sincerity as the main thing. Do not be friends with others like yourself. If you make a mistake, do not be afraid to correct yourself. Chapter 11. Lustzi wanted to rebuild the long storeroom. Ming Tzu Jian said, "I would like to leave it the same way. What do you think? Why rebuild it?" Confucius said, "This man is not talking in vain, but if he says anything, he will certainly hit the nail on the head." Chapter 12. Management consists in relentlessly focusing on it and not hypocritically implementing it. Zhu Zhang asked, "What kind of scientist should one be to be called truly glorious?" "Who do you call truly glorious?" asked Confucius. Zhu Zhang replied, "Someone who is certainly famous both in the state and in the family." "But it will make them famous, not truly glorious." Confucius objected, "Truly glorious, one has a natural directness and loves the truth, delves into words and looks into facial expressions, takes care to put himself below others. Such, without a doubt, will be truly glorious both in the state and in the family. And the famous one is the one who assumes the appearance of a humanist, whereas his actions contradict this, and they, unknowingly, remain in this delusion. Such a person will be known both in the state and in the family." Chapter 13. If someone corrects himself, then what is the difficulty for him to participate in management? If someone is unable to correct himself, then how will he correct others? Chapter 14. How can a loving person not encourage the one he loves to work? How can a devotee not reason with his sovereign? The nobleman says little, but does a lot. A nobleman has 3 features: humanity without sorrow, knowledge without error, and courage without fear. Chapter 15. If a person in any case does not ask himself what to do, then I do not know how to deal with them and how to help them. If you are demanding of yourself and condescending to others, you will get rid of grumbling. A noble man looks for the reasons for his failures in himself, and a vile man looks for them in others. When everyone hates or loves someone, it is necessary to put it to the test. Mistakes that don't get fixed are the real mistakes. I spent whole days without food and whole nights without sleep, but I found that thinking alone was useless and that it was better to study. A noble man can hardly show himself in small things, but he is able to carry out important duties. An insignificant person cannot carry important responsibilities, but can show himself in small matters. People walking different paths cannot work together. Chapter 17. Only the highest knowledge and the highest stupidity remain unchanged. There are 6 kinds of weakness: to have a love of humanity and not to learn. The disadvantage of this will be stupidity, to have a love of knowledge and not to love learning. The disadvantage of this will be groundlessness, to have a love of clarity and not to love learning. The disadvantage of this will be harming people, to love directness and not to love learning. The disadvantage this will be fervor, to love courage and not to love learning. The disadvantage of this will be indignation, to love firmness and not to learn. The disadvantage of this will be extravagance. Chapter 19. A mean-spirited person certainly covers up his mistakes. The mistakes of a noble man are like solar and lunar eclipses. People see all his mistakes, and when he corrects them, they look at him with respect.